This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He's Greg, I'm Nick. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, brought to you by Athletic Greens, your one-stop shopping for 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food-sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. Well, Greg, of course, we know what we're talking about this week. Yesterday was Cutdown Day. First question for you, any moves that might have been a surprise?
Well, going through the releases, I would say that, and I'm just going to go right through the list. I mean, I'm sure it's not shocking. It's disappointing. Devin Asiasi. Yasir Durant on the offensive line. He was a sort of a guard tackle combo. I mean, I didn't have him on my team, but it was. They gave up a late round pick. I think it was last year for him. Sort of a veteran. A mild. He wasn't on my list, so I don't even say it's a surprise, but it's notable. James Ferentz, not a surprise. I would expect him to be back. He's a veteran. Veterans with at least 4 years of experience don't have to pass through waivers. So They can just say, the Patriots can just say, hey, look, if we release you to get some guys to the roster, will you sign back with us? And they say, yeah, I don't want to leave. So it works out, sort of like Brian Hoyer and Nick Folk last year. So I assume Ferentz will be one of those guys. Arlington Hambright, I really liked a lot. He would have been my choice sort of on the interior as a backup guard. For now, the Patriots have gone with Chasen Hines, the rookie. We'll discuss him a little bit more in a second. Let's see, Kevin Harris, the draft pick at running back. Not a surprise he didn't do much. I would say Lil'Jordan Humphrey, I had him off my 53, but I know the Patriots really like him. Again, a veteran. I would not be surprised if he's back and probably elevated to the active roster for the Dolphins game. Cam McGrone, the draft pick, not a surprise, had him off. Terrence Mitchell, not a surprise, had him off, but they're very limited at cornerback, which we will talk about. Trey Nixon was a hero in training camp or the preseason, sort of faded, not consistent catching the ball. LaBryan Ray was sort of, if I had to say which move am I shocked by, or not shocked, but surprised by, LaBryan Ray, the undrafted free agent out of Alabama, who I thought, in my mind, he can clearly play in this league as a sub rusher. I mean, if I don't see the difference between him and Adam Butler, and the Patriots kept Adam Butler around, and I think might have given him an extension at one point. But it looks like they, for now, and again, these things can change because we could know stuff while we're recording this podcast in terms of it. Did they get any claims, what have you? It looks like they decided to keep Sam Roberts, not quite the same position, similar position. I liked Roberts a lot. I liked both of them. I would have tried to find a way to keep both of them. The Patriots did not do that, so they picked one or the other. I really liked Ray. I was pretty surprised by that. He can play in this league. I would not be surprised if he's claimed and becomes a good player in this league. I'm just looking at my 53 and what I had. So I had Sam Roberts out, and I had LaBryan Ray. I had LaBryan Ray as a tackle, so it's a little bit different. They decided to go with basically 4 guys at defensive tackle. I wouldn't include Roberts there. I mean, I guess he's more of an end like Dietrich Wise Roberts is, and so they're really only going with 4 guys in the interior. They're going with Godchow and Davis as nose tackles. They're going with Barmore and Guy. It's a little skinny for my liking, but that's what they decided to do. And let's see, Cody Rusey, the center, was a guy that a lot of people had on their roster. I thought he's a guy who's destined for the practice squad. Will Sherman, would love to have him back on the practice squad. My most improved guy over his rookie year to this year. J.J. Taylor, a little bit shocking considering the the Ty Montgomery injury. That might tell you that Montgomery might not be out very long. Hopefully that's the case because they really need him. But I would say those are sort of my thoughts in the more controversial picks.
Yeah, I wasn't very surprised by the list of 53. I would put Humphrey in there as maybe a slight surprise because he played so well, especially towards the tail end here. But that you don't know how much of that is who they're going against, who they're playing against, and what you are actually running as an offense. Like, I don't know how well and in depth he knows the offense right now, but the eye test would tell me that Lil'Jordan Humphrey was somewhat of a surprise. I agree with you, LeBron Ray. Looks like Mitchell might have kind of leapfrogged him a little bit, and they've decided, as you said, to stay a little skinny inside. Carl Davis is one of the dudes that I thought that might be gone if you were keeping Mitchell and or Ray, but Davis is there for now. So not many shocking things. Ferentz did some boneheaded things late in the preseason. So I don't know if that helped him or hurt him. I do think he'll be back because, the Belichick-Ferentz kind of relationship, but not too many surprises. Anything that actually shocked you, Greg? Because when I look at this, not really much of anything, I would say, shocked me. Devin Asiasi might be as close to anything, but nothing that really just made me kind of taken aback, so to speak.
No, but can we talk about things that piss me off?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we might as well go there. I mean, look, Jelani Tavai being on this roster, or really any NFL roster.
Jelani Patricia.
It's a freaking travesty. And God, I swear to God, if LeBron Ray goes somewhere and is a really good sub pass rusher, meanwhile, Jelani Tavai's on this freaking roster, I'm going to be even more pissed than I already am. I mean, no, there's nothing shocking about this, Nick. You know why? Because this roster isn't any good. Like it used to. Remember when the Patriots used to have like a ton of players on the team where you're like, oh crap, they're going to get released. I remember one year they had like 8 to 10 guys who were claimed by other teams. Like, I mean, out of this group, the only guys who I think that stand a chance to be claimed that, oh God, I have to have him. I mean, I'm going through no, not Trey Nixon. LeBron Ray, Will Sherman, maybe JJ Taylor. Like, that's it. That's it. You know why? Because the roster stinks. It's not any good. They have no good young players coming into the pipeline. I mean, I was just thinking about it before. Let's just deal with the defense, okay? This is Bill's baby, the defense, okay? Dietrich Wise is here because he's here, because Belichick loves him. I mean, he's an average player. Is he an NFL starter everywhere else? I wouldn't say that. Lawrence Guy, imported. Barmore, absolutely home run out of the park. Matthew Judon, imported. Bentley, average NFL starter. Raekwon McMillan, imported. I'm just going with starters. Jonathan Jones, developed here. Yes. Adrian Phillips, imported. Who I consider more of a starter over Kyle Duggar, but I'll give you Duggar, who in my mind is a little bit better than average starter in the NFL right now. Could he be more? No question. The talent is there. Devin McCourty, homegrown, on fumes. Jalen Mills, imported. Miles Bryant, he's here, but he shouldn't be an NFL slot corner right now. He should be like a sixth player on the defense. So that's just the defense that we're talking about. And that's the side that Bill knows the best. And there's a lack of look. I'm excited about. I like DeMarcus Mitchell. I see him more of an edge guy, like a Matthew Judon type of guy, than say, LeBron Ray. I like Sam Roberts. I think there's something there as a 6th-round pick. I like him. He, to me, his ceiling is being Dietrich Wise. He's the next Dietrich Wise, which, I mean, I don't really know what that gets you.
All right, let me jump in for a minute because we do have some news here I want to throw in.
All right.
That's come across. First of all, Mark Daniels from the Providence Journal, my old stomping grounds, Providence, East Providence. What's up, baby? Miss you, Rhode Island. Cam McGrone has cleared waivers. He'll be signing with the Patriots practice squad, so McGrone will be back on the practice squad. Good. Also, you just talked about guys who might be claimed. There has been a Patriot claimed. Devin Asiasi has been claimed. He is going to the Cincinnati Bengals. So Cincinnati has claimed Devin Asiasi.
Didn't they just sign O.J. Howard too?
I don't know. I saw that O.J. Howard got cut by Buffalo. I didn't see if he went to Cincy, but Asiasi goes to Cincinnati. And as of right now, nothing on the Patriots claiming anyone as of yet. I'm still looking at it. And I just saw a tweet from Chad Graff from The Athletic that says no waiver claims for the Patriots today. So the Patriots did not claim anybody. McGrone has passed through waivers, so he will be signed to the practice squad, and Cincinnati adds Asiasi.
It sounds like the Bengals are holding some sort of tight end audition. I'm pretty sure that I saw earlier that that O.J. Howard was basically going there for a workout and like to sign, that was going to happen. So there's tight end issues there. $100.
Yeah,
Devin Austin
visiting. Yeah, just to make sure we close that a little loop there with O.J. Howard. He is visiting the Bengals and he's expected to sign with them pending a physical. So you are correct, sir.
Yeah. So to me, that was them covering themselves, and I bet you Devin Asiasi doesn't waste a week. So we're dealing with this Patriots roster yielded no claims from what it looks like. Man, the Bears claimed a lot of people. I'm just looking through a list real quick. Asiasi.
Leatherwood went to Chicago. Of course, Leatherwood was one of the bigger cuts by Vegas because of, obviously he was drafted in the first round just last year and he's already gone. So the Chicago claimed him.
Yeah. So there were no other Patriots claimed. Not a big shock to me. I think that's a reflection on where their roster is right now. And the next shoe to drop.
Just to give you a comp and people listening to hammer the point that you're making. So people would look at the Jets roster and be like, oh, the Jets suck. Yeah. But the Jets had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys claimed today.
Wow.
So the Jets had Jason Pinnock. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, the safety, Javelin Guidry, the corner, Trevin Wesco, the tight end, Delshon Phillips, a linebacker who went to the Ravens, and the Ravens no linebackers, and offensive tackle Chuma Adoga went to Atlanta. So just to kind of put a finer point on the one that you're making, the Patriots got one guy claim Asiasi, and that looks like it's going to be an audition competition kind of deal at tight end for Cincy. Meanwhile, the Jets had 5 guys claimed today.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about problems and if this team goes south, and who knows, Belichick might be Belichick again. Like, you're going to look at the roster, the talent level, and coaching. I mean, that's the name of the game. And right now, there are at least serious questions about how talented the Patriots are and what their coaching situation is. And so, I do think they're going in the right direction. I mean, I do think. Let's talk about Chasen Hines for a second, because he's a little bit of a surprise. I didn't mention him much this summer. He was hurt for a lot of the summer. So you wonder if the Patriots are sort of buying him a little bit more time. And he could be a guy, and we're looking at if they got to move, they have to move Ty Montgomery to IR. So that means at least one person's getting released and signed back. Leading candidates are Chasen Hines, probably Roberts, Mitchell, maybe Sean Wade. Sean Wade making the roster. So let me get back to it. So Chasen Hines is a good player. I liked what I saw of him in limited amount. Really, really quick feet. Looks like a guard. Looks like he can play in this league. I just didn't have enough data to go on, and I would rather go with Arlington Hambright, somebody who I saw a lot of and was comfortable with and can play tackle some. So, but I could see why they, he was a draft pick, 6th-round pick, has some upside. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Hines was the guy. Please, people, I know what you're going to do. You're going to clip this or you're going to jump all over me. Before you do, take a deep breath. I'm not telling you that Chasen Hines is anywhere near close to this person. But when you look at body type, then you look at style of play, a little bit of Shaq Mason in him. You saw some of it in the last preseason game from LSU. The knock on him really was injury. When he played pretty well. And of course, LSU, you're talking high level college football, SEC action there. And he's somebody that did show that he could get to the second level and be a pretty damn good run blocker when he's healthy. So I do think there's some potential with him. When you see him again, he kind of looks like Shaq Mason from a build standpoint, and even some a style of play standpoint. When I was watching some clips of him over the last couple of days, when you talk about Hines, Greg, you talk about a rookie, and this roster right now, of course, it's the initial 53. So this can change an awful lot, and it likely will. But right now they have 10 rookies on the roster. That, to me, talks about their lack of drafting, the last few years. They did very well a year ago. We'll see what this class brings. But when we talk about from 2018 to 2020, those drafts that really did not bear enough fruit, that's when you have a situation. And, of course, they didn't spend a ton of money this offseason because they spent a lot of it last offseason. That means you bring in 10 rookies on your roster. So there's going to be an infusion of youth into this roster. Almost 1/5 of the roster is a first-year NFL player. And that also goes to coaching. You look at Jason Hines, he's not being brought in to be coached by Dante Scarnecchia. He's being brought in to be coached by Matt Patricia. When you have 1/5 of your roster being rookies, that's going to lay at the feet of the coaching staff. So that's another layer to me that we have to pay close attention to, the development of these young guys under this staff.
Yeah, for sure, Nick. And I think it's certainly interesting. And I'm just trying to compare it to sort of years past. I mean, I've been sort of, waging a war against like Belichick in recent years to take more younger players instead of veterans. And, did he do more of that this year? I mean, I guess, a little bit. I mean, I just wish the talent level was a little bit higher. I mean, we're talking about, Cole Strange obviously has the talent to be a frontline starter in this league. There's no question about that. It's a question of when with him. Chasen Hines, 6th-round pick. Bailey Zappi, 4th-round pick, where, let's be honest, does he really need to be on this roster? No. I mean, not if you had another guy waiting in the wings, maybe with a little bit more upside. Pierre Strong, 4th-round pick, never showed. That's a complete future bet because he never showed anything that he's capable of, being a really good NFL player. He never showed that once this summer. DeMarcus Mitchell, NFL body, college free agent. Sam Roberts, 6th-round pick. Brennan Schooler, undrafted special teams, Belichick special. And you have Jack and Marcus Jones at 4th and 3rd-round picks. So we're not talking about, at least as rookies, that the NFL reflected and said, these guys are top-level talents. But, I mean, and I don't think a lot of them have a very high ceiling. Cornerbacks, we'll see. I think Marcus Jones is a little small. I think Jack Jones, with development and getting in the weight room, I think he could be a starter. He might need to be this year. But I just wish the Patriots were a little bit further along in terms of their youth movement because the ceiling for a lot of these guys looks limited.
All right, before we get into specific positions that we might be worried about, we want to talk about cornerback. We want to talk about linebacker a little bit more in depth. First, Greg, tell the fine people listening to this podcast all about Athletic Greens.
I started taking AG1 because I wanted to make sure I was getting all the vitamins and nutritional supplements I needed in one place. Now I've been on it 2 months, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy, has kind of a mild tropical taste, a little minty, and I actually look forward to it each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food-sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, aging, all the things that you love. I take it first thing in the morning. Now it's part of my morning routine, and I'd be lost without it. Contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or anything, while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills, supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Bedard. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Bedard to take ownership over your health and pick up your ultimate daily nutritional supplement.
So the Jets have had 7 players now claimed. That's a total of 7. The Bills have had 4, and the Dolphins joined the Patriots with 1. Again, just to go back and give you an idea of depth of roster and how the league, perceives and looks at these rosters from each team in the AFC East. The Jets, 7 players claimed, the Bills 4, the Dolphins and the Patriots both with 1. All right, Greg, when we look at the 53-man roster as of right now, what position or positions are you most worried about?
I'm horrified about cornerback. I mean, petrified at this point, especially going against the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill. I mean, look, you have Jalen Mills, who nobody around the league, I mean, he thinks that he's a number 1 cornerback. Certainly wasn't paid that way when he was free agent. Who knows? Maybe use the years. Maybe he is making the leap. I doubt it. Sort of a guy who's been in the NFL is sort of what he is at this point. Then you have Jonathan Jones instead of being a slot cornerback. Now he's on the outside. Is he as good on the outside as he was on the inside? He's small. How does he match up if he gets matched up with bigger receivers? I think he's like 5'9", 5'10", $190 or something like that. And then you have Miles Bryant, who I love. Can sort of fill a bunch of different roles in the secondary, but now he's your starting slot cornerback for now. And the last time he was seen doing that, he was getting torched by the Bills. A lot of people that happens to, but it happened to him. McKenzie, Beasley, he had a tough time. He had a tough time against the Raiders and Hunter Renfrow. A lot of people do that, but and then you just the only thing they have, unless I'm mistaken, is they have the 2 rookies. That's it. Where is
Shaun Wade?
Yeah, why is he not on this roster that I'm looking at? It's an interesting question. There he is, left cornerback. Okay, Jonathan Jones. I'm looking at our lads' depth chart, and I missed it. So they have Shaun Wade, who, they traded for him a year ago. The Ravens he was a draft pick of the Ravens. The Ravens were going to cut him. Patriots picked him up. Didn't do anything last year. Flashed in the preseason this year. When it comes time to practice, he does not really crack. He didn't crack the 2 deep. To me, I kept Shaun Wade off my roster for this reason. If there's an injury, who do I want in? Jack or Marcus Jones or Shaun Wade? And I went with the Jones boys every time. Like I'd rather go with a talented youth than, Wade's okay. He made plays in the preseason. Great. In practice, he didn't do much, but I just think they're playing with fire at cornerback. They really are.
When I look at this, it's just generally speaking, because I think a lot of people will look at the 53-man roster. There's going to be a lot of conversation about how good this team is, how good this team might not be. I see a lot of people already waxing poetic on Twitter about how bad they're going to be. I see people saying, "Oh, don't throw them out just yet." Here's how I look at it. You can paint a picture when you look at a roster and there's no games that have counted that have been played yet, right? You can paint this picture of a positive light or a negative light. You can look at cornerback and you can say, yeah, there's a ton of questions, right? I'm not the biggest fan of Jalen Mills, never have been. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. Hopefully he does. When you look at John Jones, you talked about this. Jonathan Jones, smaller guy, going to play the outside now. How's that going to work? Miles Bryant is smaller. You got 2 rookies. Shaun Wade's unproven. That would be the pessimistic side. The optimistic side is, hey, Jalen Mills played great in the preseason, and Belichick has proven to people before that he can take cornerbacks and get more out of that position than others can. And, Jack Jones was a guy who has a ton of talent. He was drafted late because of off the field issues. And so there's 2 ways to look at it. Generally, when I go into a season, because none of us have seen this team play an actual game that counts, it comes down to questions. And if you have a lot of questions about a certain position, you don't feel great about it, right? That's kind of the logical way I look at it. If you find yourself listing a lot of questions about each guy playing that position, then it's a question mark, which shouldn't make you feel great about it. So cornerback is a question, no doubt. Offensive line, to me, Greg, they're very thin, especially, at tackle. They're thin everywhere on the offense. They're just thin on the offensive line. And we've talked about this before. Trent Brown's injury history and his history of being, there sometimes and not there other times. You have Isaiah Wynn, who everybody was trying to trade even up until like right before cutdown time. What's he going to look like? So the offensive line to me is that's more concerning than cornerback, because we've talked about this. That will impact Mac Jones. And you already have questions about Patricia in the offensive line and play calling. You already have questions about Joe Judge being the quarterback's coach. And now you've got an offensive line that has questions. Again, yes, there is an optimistic viewpoint. Isaiah Wynn all of a sudden wakes up and he looks like the guy from a couple of years ago. Yes, Trent Brown stays healthy and he plays like he played his first time around with the Patriots. Owenu is good. Andrews is good. Maybe Cole Strange figures it out by like week 5 or 6 and he gets his feet wet and he plays better as the year goes on. But Matt Patricia, offensive line coach, Joe Judge, quarterback's coach, all the questions I just brought up about the offensive line and the fact that they don't have a lot of depth there. That to me, that is the most glaring thing that sticks out to me about this roster is the offensive line scares the hell out of me, especially with the coaching. And I think you're going to rely a lot on Mac Jones this year.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, you look at the offensive line, and first of all, you have 2 tackles where buy-in and their compete factor has to be, a question mark the entire season. Yep. I mean, I was already questioning it in the Raiders preseason game where I'm like, what are these guys doing? Do they even care? And it's not even the regular season yet, especially Trent Brown. And not exactly Iron Men at the tackle position. And then backing them up are 2 guys in Yadni Kajus and Justin Herron, who, I mean, they can't start in this league. I mean, they can't. I mean, they're only there because that's what the Patriots have. They don't have anybody else. There aren't any other tackles they can bring in. And on the interior, you're backing up the guard position. Just assume they have James Ferentz as David Andrews backup on the practice squad or whatever. So you have a center backup at guard right now, and they'll have others on the practice squad, maybe like an Arlington Hambright or whatever. But you're backing up Cole Strange, a rookie, and Mike Owenu, who is really playing out of position, with a 6th-round pick rookie who only was like in camp for like 2 weeks. And you're like, boy, it's scary. I mean, and you could say the same thing about linebacker. Like, there are so many positions. I will say I like the defensive line and the edge guys. Like, I'm fine with that group.
I agree.
Pretty much everywhere else, they only have 2 tight ends. The team that doesn't have a fullback that is going to the outside stretch run and the Shanahan system has 2 tight ends. Like,
so it's great that you bring up tight end, Greg. Like, positions again that we're most worried about. Offensive line is at the top of the list for me. But second was tight end, and that might surprise people a little bit because you're thinking about other positions for whatever reason. But now after cutting Asiasi, you have 2 guys on your roster. And Hunter Henry, he was relatively healthy last year, got dinged up in the preseason this year. He has a long history of injury. And you have somebody at Jonnu Smith. Again, we hope that they get the most out of that guy. We believe that if he is deployed the right way by this offense and the right play calls are made at the right times, he could be an impact player. But he also was almost a 0 last year. And you don't have anybody behind those 2 guys. That drives me nuts. I agree with you on the defensive line. I actually feel pretty good about those guys.
Yep.
The linebacker thing you mentioned, this is my 1 point on linebacker. And I tweeted this out at Nick C Radio yesterday. You came out after the draft. You had a chance to add a couple of impact linebackers in the first 2 rounds of the draft. You decided to draft Cole Strange and Thornton. Fine. Hopefully those guys work out. But when you did not draft Devin Lloyd and a couple of others, right? Yep. The logic, what they sold to us. Well, we didn't draft anybody this year because we have Cam McGrone. And Steve Belichick came out and said, you got Cam McGrone. You haven't seen Lawrence Taylor in action yet. This guy's running around the field sideline to sideline. He looks like an all-pro. And everybody lined up. It was like the Patriots knew what people expected and anticipated. It's like the Patriots understood that one of the pushbacks was going to be, why don't you guys draft a linebacker? And the wall of defense that was thrown out there at every stop, Cam McGrone. Cam McGrone is our draft pick this year because of his ACL last year. Dude got cut, okay? Even if he works out a year from now or 2 years from now, you still swung and missed because you put your eggs in the Cam McGrone basket, and Cam McGrone is not ready physically. And he might never be ready physically. And you decided to pass up linebackers that could have helped you, I think, immediately.
Absolutely. And Nick, you could say the same thing about cornerback. I mean, we were all going in. There's Keir Elam. Like, if you stayed where you were in the draft, the Bills took him. He's going to Tre'Davious White went to IR. So Keir Elam's going to have to start at the beginning of the year for the Bills. Like, they had a need at cornerback. They took the guy that the Patriots could have taken. Instead, the Patriots are left with, slotting everybody up a slot. Jalen Mills, ideally it should be J.C. Jackson on a fat contract at top cornerback. Jalen Mills is your number 2 cornerback and Jonathan Jones back at slot. And everybody else slots back a spot. I'm fine with that. I'm ready to roll with that. But this group, I'm not. And you could have added a cornerback, decided not to do it. Like you said, could have added a linebacker, didn't do it. Could have added a nose tackle like the guy, Neil Farrell from LSU, that the Raiders took right in front of you, who kicked the Patriots' ass all week in Vegas, didn't do it. And offensive tackle. We talked about possibly taking an offensive tackle early in the draft to protect yourself because of Trent Brown, because of Isaiah Wynn, because you don't really have anything in the pipeline after that. And did they do it? No. And now they're left in these positions where you're just like, do they really have any talent at those spots?
Positions I like the most, just to end on a positive note before we move on to some other things.
Yeah, let's be positive.
We mentioned the defensive line. I think Dietrich Wise has shown that he's improved a little bit against the run, which is a positive. If he can continue that, I think he does have talent. We've talked about him. You talked about him, Greg. You were one of the first guys his rookie season. I remember.
Yeah, it was like 2 days in.
And how he stood out. But it looks like he's developed a little bit here against the run, which would be great news for them.
I would say that's fair.
We talked about Barmore. You've mentioned this. He looks like he's, improved against the run, and he might be a 3-down lineman.
Yeah, he's coming for a 3-down role. He might be getting Lawrence Guy's snaps. That's what I would do if I were the Patriots.
So you've got, I think you're good there. You mentioned edge. I agree. I feel pretty good about edge. Jennings has kind of popped. He popped early, hasn't popped as much lately, but at least there's something there. Uche, I believe if you put him in the right situations, he'll be fine. So I'm good there. And, I would also say safety. I feel really good about the safety room. I think they've got a nice mix of young and old. I think they'll be fine at safety. I'm okay with running back with Stevenson and Harris. I don't think you're going to get a better 1-2 combo in a lot of other, places in the league. And relatively speaking to prior years, I also feel pretty good about the wide receiver room. I'm not telling you that they, are a top 5 or top 8 or top 10 receiving room, but they have more there than they've had in recent years.
I would agree with that. I would say that I would term the receivers functional or capable enough,
right,
to move the ball. I mean, the Patriots didn't have any, great players last year, and they were 6th in the league in points, and they got some explosive plays. Of course, the offensive coordinator had something to do with that, and we'll see about that. But, I will say, I like the running backs. I like the quarterback. They have to do more around him. I have no issues with Mac. I'm okay with the receivers. I would love to see more tight end, top end talent on that team. Maybe they get Thornton back, and maybe he is that guy, because they're sort of missing a speedy, do everything sort of guy. Aguilar's fine, but he's more of just a straight line guy. Defensive line, edge. I'm good with. I wish somebody developed a little bit more opposite Judon. We'll see whether that happens with the guys that you mentioned. I don't love the safety position, but I like the pieces that they have. I'm interested to see how it comes together. I think they're a little bit overrated. Why don't you love
the safety position? Because I actually feel pretty good about that.
Well, here's the way I look at it. I think that McCourty is definitely on the downside of his career. And he's missed a lot of tackles this summer. He's really back there to get you lined up to make sure everybody's on the same page. He's a decent enough player. He's not going to make any plays for you. So that's a declining spot for me. Do they have anybody in the pipeline? Maybe Bledsoe's the guy. I do like Bledsoe. He's a young guy who really popped this summer, so that's good. Kyle Duggar, I think the jury's still out on what kind of is he an NFL starter? Is he what kind of NFL starter? To me, he's sort of been the same player throughout his career, and this is now going on This is going on year 3 for him. So we'll see. So I would hope Duggar would be a more complete player by now. To me, he's still sort of a go forward one trick pony. We'll see. Adrian Phillips, I love. I wish he had more upside in terms of just physical skills. You combine Adrian Phillips and Kyle Duggar, and you have like the best safety in the history of the game. Unfortunately, their skills are split between 2 players. And then Bledsoe's a future bet, but I like him. And then Jabril Peppers, Nick, I got to tell you, based on what I saw this summer, I have no idea why the Patriots guaranteed him $1.35 million and what he's doing here. He's not quite the Devy of the safeties, but he's pretty close. And people around, I talked to other teams about him, talked to the Panthers and Raiders after their practices. Hey, what do you think about this guy, that guy? Both teams were like, they didn't understand what the deal was with Peppers, and they didn't think he was good in Cleveland, and they don't think or New York or what have you, and don't think he's going to be good here. And they couldn't believe that him coming off an ACL, that Belichick guaranteed him $1.35 million, which basically guaranteed him a spot on the team. We'll see. Bill knows a hell of a lot more defensive football than I do, but I'm just not. I think he's a bit overrated. People like the name and remember the kid from college. And I think they'll be a little bit surprised to see what the actual NFL player is.
A couple of things. First and foremost, Peppers, look, Joe Judge guy from New York, right? But he is coming off of an ACL. I'm not going to go too crazy yet. I mean, he didn't get off to the fastest start. They've kind of slow rolled him a little bit early on. So I'm willing to give him a little bit more time to see how he can fit, and maybe he comes around physically. The other part that we've been talking about is the waived players. Now, I want to be fair to the Patriots, because they only had one guy claimed. But in fairness, when you look at the whole league, Schefter just tweeted this out, 33 players were claimed today. So, and seven of those came from the Jets, which I think does tell you the job that Joe Douglas has done. But you're talking about one player per team that's claimed, and you have a lot of teams that had multiple players claimed. So the Patriots are not, that much different than a lot of the league. I guess you can look at that 2 ways. You could say, well, all right, that they're kind of in the same bucket as a lot of other teams. So they're not, they're not awful. But I think the point Greg was making earlier is they also have not differentiated themselves from the league. They would be the Jets in years prior. They would have the team that had the more depth and the better roster, and they would stand out versus the rest of the league. So when you look at this roster, I think overall, and this should not surprise anybody, the Patriots are a team that's still kind of stuck in the middle. And, they're kind of in the middle with the roster, maybe a little lower than the middle. I think those are the expectations. We won't get into specifics until next week, but I think generally speaking, those are the expectations. Another news update here from multiple writers on Twitter. I'm going to tell everybody about this because I think a lot of listeners are questioning what's happening with him, and they will know what's going on with him by the time this podcast is released. But Lil'Jordan Humphrey has officially signed, according to a source, with the Patriots practice squad. So I know a lot of people wanted Humphrey to hang around. I saw some people concerned that he might latch on with somebody else, but Lil'Jordan Humphrey will be on the Patriots practice squad. All right, before we get to my thoughts on Jimmy G and your quick thoughts on Jimmy G, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this game, Greg, because it stunk out loud. I watched from South Lake Tahoe, which, by the way, if you've never been to South Lake Tahoe, I strongly suggest get your ass to South Lake Tahoe for like at least 3 or 4 days, if not the full week. It's a lovely place, gorgeous, 78 to 82 degrees every single day we were there. Tons of stuff to do, restaurants, breweries, shops. You've got the lake. Don't take your dog because that kept us from doing some outdoor stuff, but leave the dog at home, go to South Lake Tahoe. You'll enjoy it. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. So I watched the game. It stunk. The offensive line wasn't very good. Mac threw an awful pick. The defense wasn't great. Pretty much all phases, as Belichick would say, didn't really show up. Any thoughts on this game? I don't want to get too much into Miami because we'll do that next week, but any thoughts about just this game isolated in a vacuum and what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, look, I people have probably heard me, and I certainly, blasted the team off the game and did the film review and all that stuff. People know where I stand. I think it was for anybody who wanted to doubt what people like myself. I mean, I was certainly the first one to do it, but to sound the alarm bells about what is going on with this practice. Here's the only thing I would say to people, and I'm sure there are people out there who just want to, put fingers in their ears and pretend like everything's going to be okay. And it might, who knows? And go. If you want to do that, that's fine. But, I say like, this isn't my first rodeo. And what I mean by that is I have been covering the NFL for 20 years. Yes. But in that time, I watch camp practices. I watch preseason games. I've done it for multiple years. I've learned lessons from covering teams, what to believe, what not to believe. And the reason I have been so alarmed with this team, and you saw it on Friday night, and you can believe whatever BS Matt Patricia is putting out there if you want. But the reason I was so alarmed, and I'm glad everyone got to see it for themselves on Friday night, was this is who they have been every single practice this summer. Like it would be one thing if and I'm not an alarmist. People who read the site, people who listen to the podcast know that I am very much, I'm a prove me guy. Let me see it. Show me. Like, 1-3 last year. I didn't panic. I didn't change my prediction, which I think was, 10-7 or something, 11-5, and they ended up 11-5, 11-6, and they ended up 10-7. I'm always one game too optimistic, and so I'm not an alarmist. But I know the difference between. So if they were executing in practice against themselves and then sucking in the game, which happens a lot in the preseason because you go vanilla and like whatever, you don't really. I wouldn't care. I would have been like, okay, fine. The games don't matter, which is what I hear from a lot of Patriots Belichick loyalists on Twitter these days. Games don't matter. Like, do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'm telling you like the sky is falling on offense because of preseason games? Like I'm not an idiot. It's because it's been like this every day in practice. They make the same mistakes. The same runs that were blown up the first day in pads are getting blown up against the Raiders on Friday night. And so, that's where they are. Do I think it could get cleaned up? Maybe. They have to go back to basics. They probably have to play some up-tempo. Like, at least they have 2 weeks to rep, your first scripted 20 plays so nobody screws up and you do it right. Could it get better? Yeah, but, I think everybody would agree that I was accurate with what I told you. That's what I try to do. And sorry it looked like that on Friday night, but that's the way it's been all summer.
All right, let's get to Jimmy G quickly here. Again, next week, I'm sure we'll dive into the season, our thoughts, and all that good stuff. Jimmy G, I've got 3 quick points to make, then I'll throw it to you and get any thoughts that you have. I've obviously covered this situation closely out here in Sacramento. We're about 90 minutes away from the Bay. Even though people think San Francisco, the Niners play in San Francisco, they do not. They play south of San Francisco. They play about an hour and a half to 2 hours south of San Francisco. So it's kind of like calling the Boston Celtics if they played in like northern Connecticut. But anyway, I digress. Jimmy G, no other options at this point. That's the first thing that comes across my mind. The 49ers have been stubborn this entire time. And they have been unwilling to release Jimmy because that would kind of put egg on their face, because they thought at the end of the year, and they thought through everything they've done, that Garoppolo was going to bring back a really good pick. And everybody can paint this as, oh, the surgery got in the way. Look, Garoppolo was never going to get them what they thought he was going to get them. You look at the other deals for quarterbacks, the Matt Ryans of the world, the Carson Wentzes of the world, Baker Mayfield very late in the process. The Niners were never going to recoup the kind of return that they were hoping they were going to get. So they desperately held on to Jimmy G through the summer, hoping that somebody or multiple people would get hurt at the position, which might strengthen their leverage, which it never was going to, because you literally needed 3 or 4 teams to lose their quarterback. Now, if lightning struck and that happened, they would have been in a good spot. Lightning did not strike. So there just wasn't value in Jimmy. So the Niners held on to him this entire time and said, okay, well, we don't want to let him walk because we'll look like idiots because we held on to him for so long. So can we work something out? Garoppolo on his end, I think he overvalued himself, right? Shocking, a professional athlete overvaluing yourself. I think he believed that as soon as he could have these conversations and Don Yee, his agent, could have these conversations with teams across the league, that they would find multiple teams that were interested. And what they found out was, hey, Jimmy, you didn't have a market. People didn't believe in you. You're always hurt. You're always hurt. And when you've played, you've been incredibly average. So it was really kind of desperation on both sides. They made something work. I'm not going to forget point number 2, Greg. I'm not going to forget what has been done and said. I mean, over the last few months, Jimmy G said, there's no way I want to go back there and deal with the situation again with a young quarterback and blah, 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 blah. We've had reports that, somebody in the operation in San Francisco leaked that Jimmy G was not communicating to the coaching staff, did not communicate to wide receivers, pretty much bailed on the team whenever he had the chance to bail on the team. That stuff doesn't just go away. They put him on an island the last few weeks where he's been practicing with random dudes in T-shirts and reportedly wasn't even part of any meetings this preseason. Did not necessarily get a playbook this preseason. For people saying, well, he's been there, he knows the playbook. The playbook's going to change with Trey Lance because they're completely different quarterbacks. So I'm not going to just erase everything that's been said or done the last few months. There's a lot of issues between these two sides. I think it's going to be incredibly awkward. And the final thing I'll say, especially because awkward with Lance, if Lance gets off to a slow start, there's questions if he's ready or not. If he gets off to a slow start, there's going to be guys in that locker room that are looking over going, hey, that dude, you might not love him, but he did help us get to a Super Bowl, and he helped us get to the NFC Championship game last year. I don't want my young top 3 quarterback that I invested everything into having to look over his shoulder week to week if he starts off slow. Don't want that. Don't need it if I'm the Niners. And finally, it's hilarious to me, frankly. So much pomp and circumstance over a quarterback that is so damn average. This guy is so damn average. He played 3 good games for the Patriots. He bailed on the Patriots, if you believe Martellus Bennett and Julian Edelman and many other people who were reporting some of this stuff back then, that Jimmy G was worried about Jimmy G and kind of bailed on the team last second before that Texans game where they threw Brissett in and they had to run the read option on Thursday night. It was a disaster. He's incredibly average. I know Mike Giardi hates this. Giardi planted the flag a long time ago next to Jimmy G as if he was the next coming. He is not very good. When you ask your quarterback to throw 8 passes in a playoff game, that tells you. I watched San Francisco a lot over the last few years, and I'm telling you, they handled with Garoppolo with kid gloves. They limited the offense. They did not believe that he could make any passes consistently beyond 15 yards. Everything was safe. Everything. And he got away with a million mistakes if you watch the games. It's crazy to me that so much has been said about a guy who, if you're ranking quarterbacks in the league, would not be in the top 20. He might not even be in the top 25. This dude is average. He's average. That's what he is. And he's a backup quarterback now. We'll see if anything changes. Your thoughts, Greg?
My big thing with Jimmy, and you're a lot closer to it than to me, I read it as, I think the way this was drawn out, I thought the San Francisco 49ers were deathly afraid of Jimmy walking straight to the Seahawks and upgrading them. I mean, that's 2 games, and I think they play in week 2. Now, Jimmy, would they have been ready? I don't know. But in any event, he would have made the Seahawks better. It's 2 tougher games during the year. They're in a tough enough division as it is already. And so I think that the 49ers, basically, that's why they were delaying this for as long as they did. and hoping that somebody would give up a pick. Maybe there was an injury or something like that. And then when nobody did that, I think they went to Jimmy and they said, look, what are the Seahawks going to pay you if you walk over there? And we'll give you more. Like, can you just stay here for a year? You give us protection, it keeps you away from the Seahawks at least for a year. You want to go after that, fine. But I think they really, to me, it was more about keeping him out of Seattle than anything else.
I don't necessarily disagree with that notion. Again, Seattle might bring him in because they got Geno Smith. Okay.
And he knows the system too.
And he knows the system. So, Geno Smith is starting games for the Seahawks. Like, would he have helped the Seahawks? Yes, because he's better than Geno Smith. But that literally is only maybe a handful of teams that would have made sense for Garoppolo, division rival. Yeah. I mean, I could absolutely see that. I just think, the value and stuff just wasn't there at the end of the day. And I think a lot of the NFL looks at Garoppolo the same, which again, he's average. Can he have moments of above average play? Sure. And he's had those flashes, but he's not a guy that has been depended on. Like, San Francisco has been run game, and defense, and don't try to make mistakes. So that's what they are. All right, let's get to BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. Check them out over at BSJ, $39.99 annual plan, top-notch analysis of all the Boston pro sports. And, of course, Bedard hits you up with the video analysis, coaches film, direct access to him, and weekly chats. Greg, what is the question of the day?
Well, I decided to go more general on this just because I saw it pop up in the comments a few times. Like, a lot of people question why I go on Felger and Mazz. So let me just say this. Have you seen their ratings? I mean, that's number one. I mean, they are a ratings behemoth. They just are.
Insane.
Yeah, it's unheard of across the country. The sports talk radio ratings that they get. I mean, that's Nick's realm. You tell him.
Yeah, it's insane. They're rated. So, share is pretty much like the percentage of people listening to you at a time. And look, I can get really nerdy. I won't, because the system is a little shaquad. Nielsen stinks. But with that said, we all go off of the same system. So, Felger and Mazz, the last share I saw, I think they got a 27 1 month. They hover well above 20. And that means that pretty much 1/4 of every male 25 to 54 in Boston is listening to the Felger and Mazz show. And to give you a comparison, New York, both of their afternoon shows combined get you about 11 to 12%. So
wow.
Felger and Mazz's share more than doubles what both shows in New York do. So They are absolutely ridiculous. And I credit those guys. I worked there for a number of years. I know both of them. I know all of them personally. I mean, they are the zenith. Whether you agree or disagree with what they do or say at a sports radio, they are the pinnacle. And no one, aside from the same shows that are on the station, because the other shows do pretty damn well as too, nobody has come close to reaching that level that Felger and Mazz have.
Yeah, and so start there, and the amount of people that gets, it's basically a free advertisement about BostonSportsJournal.com to everybody who listens. So let's just start there. Number two, I go on and I give my opinion. What they say and what they do to me, it's separate than what I do. I go on there. I speak for myself when I'm on there. When they say ridiculous things when I'm on there that I perceive as ridiculous, I fight back. But I give my opinion, and they let me give my opinion. They don't, sometimes we butt heads. That's fine, but really, those are the main reasons why I go on there. I also get paid a little bit, which, helps. But look, if you don't want to hear me on with Felger and Mazz, don't listen. There's plenty of other avenues to get my opinion, whether it's this podcast, the stuff I write on the site. I do that in addition to everything else, and it gives me and the site a lot of exposure. And, and looking at the comments, some people say, like, I wouldn't have known about BostonSportsJournal.com if it wasn't from Bedard on Felger and Mazz. So, you should be able to separate me that you enjoy on this podcast and BSJ and Felger and Mazz. And the last thing I'll say is, it really bothers me when people say, you've changed. You've turned into Felger and Mazz. That's a bunch of bull crap. I've been the same guy throughout. And am I a little bit more opinionated than I was in years past, like say when I started the Globe and stuff like that? Hell yeah. I didn't know the team as well. I wasn't as comfortable with my opinion. That doesn't mean I'm trying to be Felger and Mazz. I think for myself. That's why I think I'm one of the best, if not the best in town at analyzing football, because I do it my own way. But to say that I'm turning into them, no. And you were like, oh, well, and the other thing I hear from people is you've changed. No, what I want you to consider is what has changed in the last 3 or 4 years. Is it me or is it the level that your football team plays at? And just look at it. What's the Patriots' record in their last 45 games? I mean, go look it up. They have gone from winning 75-80% of their games, going to the Super Bowl every year, to being a 500 team that battles for the last playoff spot, maybe win a playoff game. That's who they are. And, and I think my opinion and my tone has reflected where they are. I think I would subscribe the Patriots have changed, not me. But that's my diatribe.
We are who we are. I worked with Adam Jones for 15, 16 months. And I love Adam.
God bless you, man.
People almost, it was tough for them to believe me. And probably they still have a tough time believing me, whether or not Jones and I got along. I'll say it again on the record. Jones and I always got along. Always. From before I joined the show, he was a guy I called when I went down to Virginia Beach to start my solo career because he had done solo work. Before I had gone, down to Virginia Beach, before I had worked with Adam, during working with Adam, we don't talk to each other a ton after because that's just the nature of the business, unfortunately. He's got kids, he's got a family, he works nights, I'm on the West Coast. I'm not telling you we exchange texts. If something happened personally, I would guarantee you I'd reach out to Adam, and I'm pretty comfortable Adam would reach out to me. So I consider him a friend, and we always got along. On the air, we just disagreed a lot about the world of sports, and we look at it from a different we look at it from a different lens. And so some of those got passionate. Did I throw my headphones across the room 2 or 3 times? Did I tell them to bleep off when we went to break? A couple times. But honestly, we go and, we've had beers together and stuff like that. So look, I think people kind of get, sucked into the sports world, and I do, and you do, Greg, and everybody does. But I felt the same way when I was on Adam's show, where Adam had his way of thinking and presenting and doing his thing, and I had mine. And eventually, did it cause me to walk away? In part, that was obviously, playing a role because I didn't want to be doing that for 5, 6, 10 years. I didn't want to do that. But again, opportunity, and you do what you love, and I just think people try to throw everyone in one bucket in this media world, which is unfortunate, but that's what happens. He's Greg, I'm Nick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and gals, because we went long, obviously, but thought it was some good stuff. We'll be back next week. As we get ready for the season, we get into a groove here every week, breaking down the games, previewing games. Can't wait for that to happen. He's Greg. I'm Nick. Athletic Greens. It is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattle.